Hello. I've been reading the Boris document, and having come clean about the fact that I have met Boris in the past, I'm really not going to routinely call him Johnson. Johnson makes him sound like a piece of anatomy. And anyway, I know his sister, don't really like her. I know his father, very charming. I think his brother is a delight. Boris? Really, there's so many people who died during the COVID crisis, and I don't think anybody is going to object to me saying that Boris is a shit of the first order. And he hasn't taken their misery seriously. And that's really the worst problem. So yeah, Boris. And that's how he's known, and that's how he should be flushed into history. Now, Michael Fabricant was interviewed this morning on the BBC. He gave an interview to the BBC about the Boris report without even reading it. He waved it around a bit. He began by saying that he understood that it was vindictive. I won't judge the truth. I won't judge it till I have read it in its entirety. But, this is why was he giving an interview in which case? This is why he is judged on the quality of his hair, not his intellect, his public rectitude, his moral rectitude, or his political competence. He says that he was concerned about the fact that others had been impugning the nature of the committee. They've been criticised for questioning the nature of the committee. And some members of the committee, he pointed out, he had observed, were pulling faces, looking skywards, turning their backs on Boris. He witnessed this discourteous behaviour. And to object to people questioning the integrity of the committee, this whole question is naive. It's naive to ask it. It's naive to worry about it. He would say that. I would say that. It's a distraction. The committee, of course, should be treated with dignity and should behave with dignity. He speaks of the growing evidence against Bernard Jenkin. But the issue is not that Bernard Jenkin was partying. The issue that Boris was facing was not the partying, but the lying about partying. As far as I know, Bernard Jenkin hasn't lied about partying. It hasn't even come up. And whether Boris is, as Fabricant says, a man of great wisdom, who cares? He's a man who should be flushed into the lavatorial abyss of history. He will be remembered as something that is torn from the loo roll and used and then thrown away. And whether people are terrified that he might come back again and be PM again, well, yes, there are occasions when you flush and it simply doesn't go down. But this is a 14-month investigation. 108-page document. It's a lengthy read. 7-strong committee weighted in favour of the Conservatives with 4 sitting party members. And there's basically 3 main points. And I thought I'd summarise them before finally going to bed. Sorry, I'm in shirt sleeves. Warm night and lots of reading. So, the first point, and almost all of this is not about whether he lied to Parliament. Almost all of this is about the efforts made by himself, through his minions, through Nadine Dorries and Rees-Mogg and Andrea Jenkins and all these ridiculous twits. These are the people who have done for him. So watch and learn, Boris. Watch and learn. Because without those people, actually, he might have scraped through. But that sort of Trumpian effort to smear the committee is what has genuinely done for him. And that's the tone that comes across in the report, without a shadow of doubt. So, yep, he can pat Rees-Mogg on the back. He can give him an award. He can try and give Doris an award. I'm sure she wants that. He can smear the sofa with whoever he wants. But in the end, it's his henchmen, it's his acolytes who have torched his efforts. So, number one is the repeated contempts of Parliament, including a campaign of abuse and attempted intimidation of the committee, which forms the crunch. Come on up here. Come on. I know you want to. Up you come. Right. Come and talk to us. It says his explanations were disingenuous, a deliberate attempt to mislead Parliament. And part of that was the frequency of his denials, which compounded that deceit. So number two is his attempt to undermine the parliamentary process. It's much the same sort of issue, which explains why the committee recommends a 90-day suspension. Well over the odds for triggering a recall election, for triggering a by-election in his constituency. And then the additional issue of having his parliamentary pass revoked. This is the same thing that happened to Speaker Bercow. Normally you would keep your pass if you were a former member of Parliament, or particularly if you were a Prime Minister. But Bercow had his denied because he was branded a serial liar and a serial bully. Boris is not a serial bully. He simply condones serial bullying. Number three, his contempt for the parliamentary process was made worse by his being Prime Minister at the time. There is no precedent, says the report, to be Prime Minister deliberately misleading the House. There's a standard, in other words, expected of ministers, and an honesty that is lacking in Boris. And Boris is not just a minister, he is the Prime Minister, the First Minister of the Crown. In addition, he breached confidentiality in his resignation on Friday. So he does for himself every time. All of this is made worse by his henchmen and by his bluster. And that alone represents serious contempt. He talked of Harriet Harman's prejudicial views, all there. Bernard Jenkins' birthday party, not there, but that was what he talked about. Surely that is a tu quoque fallacy that even Mr. Putin would savour. And I suppose dominating the whole thing is the recognition of the fact that he is the first Prime Minister in history to have committed a criminal offence in office and to have accepted the charge of doing so in office. I think for him to have avoided blame would have been almost impossible, but for him to have tried to sabotage the committee indirectly through his henchmen, and then directly with his resignation and his letter of resignation and his letter at the last minute to Harriet Harman, I cannot imagine that it had anything other than a driving effect on the final verdict and the final writing of the report. The report is damning. It's excoriating. It is. I think it's a justified punishment. As I say, Boris is being flushed away, and whether or not he keeps bobbing back up as some sort of floater, who knows? But I think the image is justified, and And he will go down in history. Well, he won't go down in history, keep floating back. The Boris that simply will not flush away. But he will be. That's how he will be known, even if he comes back in some form. And I cannot imagine the doors to number 10 will be open to him. In fact, I could well imagine that in the foreseeable future he'll be barred from standing for the Conservative Party. Now, whether Mr. Farage has got a plan, I don't know, but I don't see him being welcome in the ranks of the Conservative Party. Boris has behaved appallingly.